So I just wanted to talk about a typical, very common case that we see this quite often, where somebody will stand on the plumb line like this. I'll just show the side view, camera, sorry, where their pelvis is tilted forward. And this happens often in, well, it's just very common, but I see it a lot in our older population. And what happens when the pelvis is tilted forward like this is it completely alters everything with their gait. So if somebody's pelvis is tilted forward like this, it means that they're going to wind up walking flat-footed. They have a hard time pushing, and also it's like they're pulling their legs with their hip flexors rather than pushing their legs with the back body. So this is when you should actually, the legs should actually float when you walk. It should be completely effortless. But somebody in this position, it's impossible. The leg cannot hang from the hip socket appropriately, and so therefore they are walking flat-footed. And this just looks like it hurts. At least it does to me. But this tilting of the pelvis, the thing that happens, because you can't swing the leg properly, what happens is people land flat-footed. And then they lose toe flexibility. And so they can no longer push off with their foot as they're walking. And what this does, I think, I can't prove it, but it just so happens, or it just seems to me, that an awful lot of people that have come to me with discomfort are sort of slated for hip surgery. That's how they walk. And so I'm questioning and thinking, well, maybe it's because the pelvis is tilted forward and the hip socket, the acetabulum, is pushing or rubbing on a different part of the hip socket, and perhaps that's the cause of the problem. So perhaps if we could get their pelvis into a better position, then the acetabulum would sit properly. Femur head. Okay, and then the issue also with not being able to toe push is that then they lose their flexibility in their toes. And I think, sorry camera, here we go. I think everybody should be able to kneel on the floor on their heels without a problem and be able to get up from the floor in 3 different ways. You should be able to get up. This is the easiest way, kind of getting up like that. Second way is people, I think, should be able to squat all the way down to the floor with no problem and get up with no problem. We used to have to do that every day of our lives before the toilet was invented, and I think that since the toilet was invented, we've become too tight and too weak, many of us, to be able to do that, and I think that's really, really important. And the other method is, of course, to be able to get up off the floor in a lunge. So kneeling on the floor, putting one foot up, and I find in our population, very few people find that easy. And so the goal of what we're trying to do is get them to the point where they're able to. So we work on those movements. Now the key also is when somebody is tilted like this, they have certain muscles that are facilitated and are firing when they shouldn't be. In this population, people often don't, and even younger people, and this isn't just in older people, but people often don't get their weight over their feet to stand up. They try to stand up too soon, and that fires their hip flexors, quads, and I wonder sometimes if it's a chronic firing of these muscles in gait, because here they're pulling their legs rather than pushing their legs, so these muscles are constantly firing. I'm wondering if that's part of the issue. So all of their movement gets affected if they're standing in a bad position. But simply fixing the position is not going to educate their system to change how they fire their muscles when they get out of chairs, when they walk, when they get up off the floor. A lot of what we try to do is re-educate our clients in terms of how to move. I've spent a lot of time teaching people how to walk, which may seem silly, but it helps a lot. So often just the simple thing of telling somebody, okay, instead of standing here, try to bring your pubic bone forward and almost exaggerate it. So you're going from a Donald Duck posture to a Pink Panther posture. And usually if you tell them be a Pink Panther, they'll wind up somewhere in the right place. And I don't have a problem overcorrecting a little bit initially, because I usually find that they have a hard time staying there. And as soon as you get the pelvis forward, suddenly they're completely changing the muscles that they use to walk. It's really quite magical. And then if you also integrate finding your height as you do this too, the posture improves tremendously. It helps. I'm not even talking about forward head and all the other issues of the upper body today, but it all often will fall into place when you get the movement right. And so that obviously takes time, but to change a pattern, if you've been walking in a particular way for many, many years, it doesn't change overnight, and you need constant reminders. So we need to re-educate the movement.